Hi, my name is Dustin Hoffman. Welcome to my MasterClass. We are lazy. I include myself. We are basically lazy. We do it constantly. Oh, he's a nice guy. Oh, he's a prick. Whatever. It's much easier to do white hat, black hat. Oh, I don't like those kind of people. Is that we don't? It's so difficult to investigate. I mean, everyone believes what they believe. We're all different. I don't think you should play a part, and I don't even want to say a character part, it's any part. You should play a part unless you're there. I don't want to see on the screen someone being a prick without showing the prick in them. I don't want to see some woman playing a bitch unless I'm seeing the bitch in her. I don't want to see, this isn't me, this is the character. Come on. We're all everything. We're all mean bastards. We're all lying, deceptive people. We're all chicken shit. We're all funny. We're all manipulative. We're all selfish. We have all those aspects to us. Left alone, we'd be the worst parts of ourselves. I think it's very difficult to be civil. I don't think it's hard to pull the trigger. I think it's hard not to pull the trigger. Strasberg said a great thing. I mean, he said a few great things, said things I didn't agree with. One of the great things he said was, in my day, you'd look at these things, what were they? I can't blocked out what they're called, but these theater newspapers, theatrical newspapers you'd get once a week. Backstage was one, and it would show you the readings. Open readings meant you didn't have to be a member of Equity. And by the way, it's catch-22. You can't be a member of Equity until you get an Equity job. You can't get an Equity audition unless you're a member of Equity. So all that stuff. And open auditions meant you could go. Anybody could go. But it still had the breakdown. Leading men, leading women, young leading men, young leading women, character men, character women, young character, juveniles, ingenues, and they always had a subtext to them. Leading men, leading women were gorgeous. Character juveniles were really ugly. That's the only ones I got. Ethnic, in other words, right? Or the girls that were the friends, it's the way it was in high school, the less attractive, overweight girls that were somehow always the friend of the gorgeous girl. So the character ingenue was different than the leading, the one who was the leading lady. And in class one day, Strasberg said, just think about that. If you met someone, let's say last night, you were telling someone, well, I met this guy last night, or this girl said, I met this guy last night, and her girlfriend said, so did you like him? Well, he asked me out. Well, what's he like? She said, well, he's kind of like a leading man. Strasberg said, that's a character. Ooh, you want to go out with someone who's like a leading man? It already feels like a one or two dimensional person. And he said, so there is no such thing as leading men, because if you say there is, that's a character. And if someone were to say, this is the character I want to play a leading man, then your mind starts to go as to what that means and how you behave. And it sounds like you have no unattractive parts to yourself. Leading men, or at least it's different now, I guess, but leading men traditionally, like leading women, have not been three-dimensional characters. They're two-dimensional. Three-dimensional characters can have all those unattractive. That's why actors say they're the best parts, because you can see those. And I remember having an argument with someone way back when I was at acting school, talking about Hitler. I said that would be a part I would love to play. Oh, why? Why do you want to play an animal? I said, no, he wasn't an animal. He was a human being, and that's more frightening. And to really try to define, the different aspects of him, to get to, the opportunity that his narcissism afforded him, to get to the opportunity that his being turned down as a painter. One of the first things he did, he couldn't get in the Art Institute, but he made his living off of stuff he painted, landscapes. They made postcards out of them and he sold them. And when he came, in power in the 30s, the first thing he did, the very first thing, there's an extraordinary documentary, I think, called The Architecture of Doom. Before he burned the books, he destroyed the art by the artists who were accepted into the institute that he wasn't. Some of the great artists of his time, the paintings were destroyed. It's very difficult to see how painful life is. A large part of our brain is primitive. We are basically primitive people. Why is it that if we hear about 200,000 people being killed in an earthquake somewhere way off in China or India or whatever, it has no real effect? But if a cat is run over right outside or when we're walking down the street, it has great impact because of somehow of the vividness and the immediacy of it. We block out our humanity too much of the time. The job of the artist, I think, is to admit that. Yeah, that's me. On The Graduate, Mike did something that was really revolutionary, and that was he miscast the lead. He cast me as a 6-foot-tall, blonde, blue-haired debating squad track star by the name of Benjamin Braddock. When you read the book, it was Robert Redford, and he did this extraordinarily courageous thing by, miscasting. The movie was made, it was cut. I went back to New York for auditions. I got the usual, thank you, next. Well, they're cutting me into becoming a star. Thank you, next. And I learned later, years later, in an interview that the producer, Lawrence Terman, gave, that, before DVD and all that stuff, that they would have prints of the movies in 35 millimeter, and the rich people in Beverly Hills and Bel Air would have their own screening rooms with 35 millimeter projectors, and they would show the films, different films, before it opened. And the producer, Lawrence Terman, said in a New York Times interview years later, it's the first I knew of it, that people would see it before it came out, and they all said the same thing to him. Man, what a great movie you almost had if you hadn't miscast the lead. I think I feel the same about working as I do about life, more and more as I age, and that is that you keep trying to get life right from day to day. And as I mentioned to the actors, you try to bullshit yourself less and less. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but I liken life like a hot furnace. And if you're coming close to some realization about yourself, or someone tells you something about yourself that's painful, it's like sitting on a hot furnace, you jump off. And we go through life jumping off that which is painful. And I do think that the conscious part of us is the least part of ourselves, that we, like it or not, most of us go through life based on what our unconscious tells us to do. And the whole idea of the unconscious is that it's unconscious, so it's slippery. You can't find it. It gets out of the way. And many times, years after you've made mistakes, you say, I knew it. I knew it the first day. Why did I marry that person? Or why did I go with this person? I knew it. I knew it. And you force it out. No, but then, you start to make whatever rationales you make. But the truth was there. And I do think that on some deep level, the truth is always there. It's in us. And many times you have to dig for it. It's always been very interesting. I remember Saddam Hussein, there was a photograph of him in a swimming pool, and his hands were like that because his grandchild he had just thrown up in the air. And could see the grandchild midair. And Hussein was like, and I said, oh, he's a grandfather. He ain't no different than me. And I think that's maybe the most difficult thing to do, is to admit those parts of yourself rather than to say, well, this isn't me. Yeah, that's me. That prick is me.